You're Free to Go is sponsored by Milburn Men's Clothing, where top athletes shop for sharp, tailored style. And whether Mark and I are in the studio or the courtroom, Milburn dresses us for success. Mention YFTG and get 10% off at Milburn Men's Clothing, which has been providing the finest in men's clothing and suits since 1946. Call 651-645-2922 or visit www.milburn.com. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, to You're Free to Go. Hopefully it's your favorite podcast, and we appreciate you tuning in again today to listen to this latest episode. We understand no one really loves hearing advertising, but we have sponsors, and we appreciate that they're supporting us and that they believe in our show, and we hope that you do support them in return. So please bear with us when we have those sponsor ads. Milburn Men's Clothing, I think you hopefully agree that Mark and I are always looking very sharp. And we're thanks to Milburn Men's Clothing. And then, of course, Lang Realty, which is a huge real estate firm. And their down low investigations, which every criminal defense lawyer uses, a lot of family law attorneys use as part of divorces. Businesses use them when they need to do investigations and so forth. So we want to thank our sponsors, and we want to thank you for listening to them. And if you can support them, we appreciate that as well. So today, I was going to talk about a different case. Mark and I are going to do crazy-ass cases today. But I was going to talk about a different case, but I saw a really good friend earlier today, and he was involved in a case a few years ago, and he said, "Guy, I've been listening to your podcast. When are you going to talk about my case?" So I said, "All right." He said, "Of course you got to change my name, though." So I said, all right, I'll move it up. I'll bump it up. I wasn't going to talk about it for a couple more months, but it's a short, cute little story. So, Mark, I'm going to share that one today, and then we'll let you share one of your fun cases. This case occurred, believe it or not, it occurred on 9/11, but it was 9/11 of 2016.
15 years later.
Yeah, exactly. And it was the arrest occurred at 7 in the morning. So 7 a.m. on 9/11. I get a frantic call that day around 4 p.m. And I get this frantic call from three good friends of mine. And we're going to call them David Cohen, that's the guy I saw this morning who said, "Hey, when are you going to talk about my case?"
That's the fake name.
Yeah, David Cohen. Yeah, fake name David Cohen. He's a CEO of a public company. He's a lawyer. He's got a lot of credibility, a lot at stake. All of a sudden he's getting arrested. And two other buddies of mine, fake names, Josh Greenberg and Bill Schwartz, who are both medical doctors, Ivy League trained medical doctors. These guys call me at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They're like, "You're not going to believe, excuse my French, the shit that happened to us today. We are freaking out. We're so furious. This is going to affect our careers. We got arrested. Now we're going to have to tell the hospitals, and they're going to, maybe suspend us." The CEO is like, "I'm a public company. I can't be a CEO of a public company with a criminal arrest and a conviction."
Wait, what did they get arrested for?
Well, it's pretty funny, actually. So I'll give you a little history. These three guys have been buddies for a very long time. And for over 20 years, they've been riding their bicycles every Sunday morning, the three of them, just the three of them, up in the Daytona Beach area. It's called from Ormond Beach, which is it's Florida, the east coast of Florida, just a little bit north of Daytona. They go about 25 miles south all the way to Daytona Beach shores, and along the way they pass several small little cities there. So it's about a 50-mile bike ride round trip. And literally they have done this every Sunday for over 20 years. They've never had an issue whatsoever. And of course, they have no criminal record whatsoever. They were all like in their late 50s at this time when this happened. And what happened is, as they're heading south, about halfway down their journey before turning around and heading back north, they go through a small town called Eleanor Village. That town is maybe a mile long. It's a very small town. It's in Volusia County, Florida. It's below Daytona Beach, by about 10 miles below Daytona Beach. So they're riding their bikes on A1A. And anyone who knows Florida knows A1A runs on the east coast of Florida, right next to the ocean, from the Keys all the way up actually to Maine, I believe. Like, it goes up the whole eastern coast of the United States, actually. So this was their normal bike ride. And what happens when they get to this small little town of Eleanor Village, The road is under construction, and there's a bunch of those Bob's barricades and some, direction.
I've always wondered how wealthy is Bob?
Oh, he's everywhere, right? Wish I was related to
Yeah,
Bob.
really.
You're right. So they see that the road is closed, so they ride through Eleanor Village up on the sidewalk. And as they do that, there's again 7 a.m. on 9/11. There's two cop cars kind of parked off to the side, and one of the cops is standing there next to his car, and he yells, "No riding on the sidewalk." And my good friend who I saw today, David, he looks at the cop and yells, gives him this look like, "What, are you kidding me? The road is blocked. The road is closed." So he gave him a little bit of lip, I'll be honest with you. And but the guys keep riding. Again, it's about a mile long down Eleanor Village, and they're on the sidewalk adjacent. And it's the beaches to their, as they're heading south, it's on their left, right? Like a beautiful view, by the way. So next thing you know, they hear cops with the sirens going on, and the cops go around these buildings because the road was blocked. And all of a sudden, as they're exiting the sidewalk, the bicycles to get on the street, cops run right in front of them with their cars and stop the three bicycles. And they say, "You're coming with us." And they take them and they walk them with their bikes back about a half a mile into Eleanor Village. And they sit the three guys on the sidewalk, put them in handcuffs, and say, "We are arresting you for violating a criminal statute that says it's illegal to ride your bike on a sidewalk adjacent to a beach."
Oh my
Right.
God.
In all our years, I'd never heard of it.
I never heard of that
Right?
either. I mean, really.
I don't know how they got that passed. And I guess
Wow.
if you look at the criminal statutes, there's literally thousands of
But
statutes.
it's obviously, is it an infraction, a
It
misdemeanor?
was actually a misdemeanor.
A misdemeanor.
Right. But yeah, so it was a very, not a felony, which is serious. But as you can imagine, these guys are really freaking out because they feel like it really can affect their livelihood in a big way. So, and they're thinking, Jesus, 9/11, it's such a serious day in our country. What do you're really doing this to us on, 9/11? What's the story? So,
There had to be some backstory to this.
yeah, you're right.
I mean,
So,
for police to make that kind of arrest,
yeah.
there has to be.
Right, so they leave them in the handcuffs. It's September, which is a little hot in Florida that time of year, on the sidewalk for literally an hour, and all these people are going to the beach, driving cars. Everyone's passing them. They were so upset. They're like, "We're sure people who know us saw us."
Humiliation.
Yeah, humiliated in handcuffs the whole
Wow.
time. So they're like, "This
Worse
is."
than a perp walk.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the government does that on purpose, right? And that's going to actually tie in, Mark, to what was going on here. So let me just share with our viewers and our listeners. When a police officer makes an arrest like this, they can take you in and book you, or they can give you what we call a paper arrest, which is called also a notice to appear. And after an hour in the handcuffs on the sidewalk, they took the handcuffs off and they handed them paperwork for a notice to appear, which is a court order to show up in criminal court to answer to these charges. So the good news is the officer didn't exercise his right to take them to the jail and book them and have a mug shot and so
Right.
forth. They exercised discretion and gave them a notice to appear. So procedurally, what a lot of people don't understand is you're really not technically charged with anything at that moment in time. At least in Florida, you get charged when the state attorney's office, which other states call district attorney, when they file a document called an information for a misdemeanor like that. It's a legal document. It's a piece of paper called an information, and that's when you get actually officially the charges attached to you. So basically, a prosecutor will get the paperwork from the officer. They'll see, okay, we have 3 people. We want to charge them with violating this ordinance. It's a criminal violation for riding a bike on a sidewalk adjacent to the beach. And the prosecutor reviews it, and then they can file this information and actually file the criminal charges. So it was really important that on the same day of this incident, these 3 gentlemen called me and got me involved, because the first thing I did on Monday morning, because remember this was a Sunday, I called the prosecutor immediately Monday morning. And I said, look, I've got these three gentlemen that I'm representing, and I mentioned, the prosecutor starts laughing, like, the case is already on my desk. They said, and I'm looking at it, you got Cohen, Greenberg, and Schwartz. She goes, this has got to be a law firm, right? You got Cohen, Greenberg, Schwartz, law firm? I was like, and they're cracking up. I said, actually, no. I said, one is a lawyer, but he's a CEO of a public company. The other two are medical doctors. I said, but could very easily be a law firm. So I said, what the heck is going on here? So fortunately, the prosecutor was already in the loop, and they explained, and it ties into what you said about the Perp walk. So there's this area, Eleanor Village, and it's, like I said, a small 1 mile strip or so up in the Volusia County area near Daytona Beach, where there's a lot of older people that live there, predominantly older people, senior citizens and so forth. And they had been calling the police on a regular basis for months and months and months, complaining that there's a lot of bicycle riders, there's a lot of skateboarders, there's a lot of rollerbladers, there's a lot of joggers, there's a lot of people, in pushing strollers, and that it's becoming very dangerous for them, these senior citizens, to cross the street from their condo across the street to get to the ocean. They're getting pushed, they're getting knocked over, they're this and that. And they kept calling the police. And so the police actually, on a few occasions, they warned people. They showed up and they warned people, hey, don't ride on the sidewalk. These people are trying to cross and so forth. But it didn't make a difference. And the seniors that lived there kept complaining. So on this particular day, 9/11, they decided, the police said, all right, we're going to do something. We're going to make an arrest, and we're going to put them on the sidewalk in handcuffs. So all these senior citizens that live in this neighborhood that have been complaining, driving, calling our sheriff every single day for months and months, complaining, they will be satisfied. They will see we're finally doing something about this. So that was kind of their perp walk. They put them on the sidewalk in handcuffs. These three guys, it was unbelievable what happened to them. So the prosecutor gives me the whole background story on it, right? And now I understand why, everything happened the way it did. And unfortunately, these three guys just happen to have bad luck on that particular day, that they were the ones that got picked out of this whole thing. So the prosecutor's kind of laughing about it. They, of course, understand, too, how scared when I told them my clients were. But they said, no, we're going to work this out. And tell them, don't worry, everything's fine. We'll resolve it. So I want to share, right then on the phone, I resolved it with the prosecutor. So remember I mentioned, just so everyone remembers, I say, the police make an arrest, they write the reports, the prosecutor in the state of Florida is the one that files the criminal charges. So you have a window of opportunity between the arrest and when they file that information to kill the case. So I'm unfortunately involved already during that phase. Sometimes people make the mistake and they don't hire a lawyer till after they're charged. And then it's much harder to kill
the best situation is when it's never a case in court.
Right. So fortunately, these guys called me that day. A lot of people do call immediately after the arrest, but sometimes people wait till they show up at that first court hearing when charges have already been filed, and then they go to hire a lawyer, which is a big mistake. So after I spoke with the prosecutor, I prepared a letter for the three clients, David Cohen, Josh Greenberg, and Bill Schwartz. And I want to, if anyone's looking, here's the letter. I'm going to share it a little bit with you guys. It was a 2-page letter. It's got a lot of yada, yada, yada stuff in there that are legalese. But I just really enjoyed the letter, so I want to share it with you. So I basically start off, dear David, Josh, and Bill, spoke with the officer, I spoke with the prosecutor, yada, yada, yada. I explain how you're not officially charged with a crime until the prosecutor files an information. And I said, in talking with the prosecutor has agreed not to file an information. In other words, you're not going to be criminally charged. And what the prosecutor, I write, in my negotiating, what the prosecutor wants in exchange for this agreement is, so Josh and Bill, remember, David's the one that gave lip to the police officers, right? I said, Josh and Bill, if you each write a sincere letter of apology to the police captain and pay $40 each to the police trust fund, the prosecutor will drop the case.
$40 is some magic to
right. Well, I don't know where that number came from, but the cost of living in Daytona Beach, that Volusia County area, is pretty low. So,
oh my God!
Look, if this had been in Miami, it would have been $400.
LA would have been 4,000.
Yeah, I keep telling you, move back to Florida. So what they're going to do is no file the case, which
Right.
means not prosecute it. If they do this letter of apology to the police captain and the $40 to the police trust fund. And then I write to David, the one who gave lip to the cop. I said, David, unfortunately, there are a few more conditions for you because the lead officer alleges that you made direct eye contact with him when he yelled to walk the bikes on the sidewalk. Therefore, in addition to the $40, they also want you for the next 6 months not to ride a bicycle anywhere in the state of Florida. She's not allowed to ride his bike. And that you will make 6 presentations, 20 to 30 minutes in length, to students at schools on the importance of complying with officers' commands and bicycle riding safety.
Oh my
Right?
God.
This poor
is
guy.
Like they're being treated like they're elementary school kids.
Yes. Yeah.
And the teacher is telling them to write on the board, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. In that case,
Right.
not ride your bicycle, what? Anywhere in the state of Florida?
Unbelievable. So
That's ridiculous.
So my good friend David Cohen, he's a lawyer. He's the CEO of this public company. He can't. He has to pay $40. I said actually they wanted $500 for him, but I'm like, it's not. You can't discriminate based on even if he acted worse, they all have to have the same fine. So they agreed to the $40. Can't ride a bicycle anywhere for 6 months. He has to do 6 presentations to high school students. They have to be at least 20 to 30 minutes long. And finally, he wants you to successfully complete a 4-hour anger management class.
Anger? What kind of anger?
Because he gave lip to the cop.
What was the lip?
Right? He just said, we can't ride on the sidewalk. Can't you see the street
That's
is closed?
anger?
Yeah.
Oh,
And I said,
see, that department obviously doesn't have real crime.
right, no. And I said,
Eleanor Village, what's
right.
that's
Eleanor Village, Florida.
God,
And I said, if you're
that's a joke.
So I said, David, if you agree to these terms, your case will be dropped as well. So I find out from David afterwards that he's in a meeting. He's in a meeting like with his board of directors, and he gets this via email, and he's looking at it during the meeting, and he is freaking fuming. He's like, Guy, I was fuming, and as I'm reading this about what I have to do, he's like, I say out loud, I don't even realize I'm talking about, he's like, anger management. You're so upset. He's like, are you freaking kidding me? Anger management? So I said, well, it sounds like you do need anger management. So anyway, I then go through a few more in the second page of the letter, a few more legalese about the case and how it's going to be resolved. And then I give them the information on the captain and his address and the chief of police and everything and where to send the money for the $40. And then so after I finish with all that good, information, my final paragraph says, oh, one final thing. David, the guy who gave lip to the cop, I am totally kidding about your punishment. You get the same exact deal as Josh and Bill.
That is.
Yeah, so
You were joking
I totally
about
was
all that?
messing with him. Now, of course, they were good friends. A real
Oh my God.
if they weren't my friends, it would have been a serious letter all the way
Could you imagine
through.
If he had a stroke doing that?
Yeah, his wife would have killed me. On the other hand, maybe she would have been thankful. I don't know. But
That is
so
hysterical.
to this day, remember we're talking, 2016. So next September, this, will be almost a year from now, will be 10 years since this happened. But to this day, every time I see him, he always laughs about it. He cracks up about
That's
it.
hysterical.
Yeah.
I have to admit,
So-
I've never been in a situation where I could joke with a client.
Right.
Like
It was
that.
really fun.
But,
It was
it's interesting. That case points out something that a lot of people don't, think about a lot. We've been talking about a lot of very serious cases that we've encountered in our career. You and Epstein and, involved with the Diddy case, and I've had a whole bunch of them. But sometimes the most innocent conduct in the wrong place in the wrong time can wind you up in the crosshairs of the criminal justice system.
It's so true.
It's really amazing.
Yeah.
And even though that's the most ridiculous crime you could imagine, it still had consequences.
Right.
And I'm sure for a period of time while this thing was going on, these guys were saying, what?
I know. They thought they were going to lose privileges to
Right,
operate.
especially, you got to
Yeah.
keep your skirt clean
Yeah.
when you're in a high-level position
Right.
like that. Well, in a similar way, I want to talk about when good people wind up with a error of judgment, and wind up in a situation that they could have never imagined they're in.
Right.
And that happens from time to time. And I had a client, we're going to call him Bill to protect the anonymity.
Mm-hmm.
Bill was a sitting criminal court judge in Chicago, in Cook County. And overnight, and at the time, he was on the cover of Time magazine as one of the most toughest judges in America.
Wow, that's a big deal.
Big deal.
Yeah.
And as a result of Bill's service as a criminal court judge, he was nominated to be a federal district court judge and was pending nomination, pending confirmation, when he had to fill out a FBI investigation, because the FBI does a background check on you.
Sure. Yeah.
Even though you're a judge, they want to
Yeah, they do a
double-check.
very thorough background.
Very thorough.
It's one of those backgrounds where you give them some names, they call those names and say, give us 5 more names.
Right.
And then they call them, give us 5 more names. They go very deep.
Right.
Yeah, I've gotten those calls.
Right. And what happened is, overnight, he went from being a federal district court nominee to a defendant in a criminal case.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And it was amazing how this happened. Turns out he's nominated for the district court. He fills out the application, very lengthy application. And there's a section on the application, are you involved in any lawsuits? And in what capacity are you involved? Are you a defendant in any lawsuits? And he marks yes. And he gives the name of a case that's pending in St. Lucie County, Florida.
Florida, sure.
Okay. And the FBI agent that took the information calls the resident agent down in the St. Lucie County area, says, do me a favor, we just got to check this off that it's been checked. Go to the courthouse, pull the file, and, verify this.
So this was a while ago, because nowadays it's all online.
All online.
Yeah.
The local agent goes there, goes to the clerk in the county court, and says, I'm looking for the case of blah, blah, blah versus Bill, blah, blah, blah. And the woman there behind the counter says, okay, it's in that room, points to a room. And the FBI agent says, well, where is it in that room? And she says, it's the entire room.
Oh, my God.
Turns out it's a giant case involving a condominium association and an insurance company and a mortgage company against Bill and a whole bunch of other people, and it alleges fraud. Mm-hmm. So what happened is, Bill's brother-in-law was a developer of a big condo that had a loan from the bank, a construction loan. And the construction loan was due to be paid off. The problem is they didn't have enough money to pay it off because they hadn't sold enough units.
Right.
So the banker at that particular local bank, fortunately a lot of bankers do this, said, you know what, we can do a win-win. You find people to claim that they're buying the property, straw buyers.
Oh, yeah.
Put down that they put down a deposit, even though they didn't really put down a deposit. We'll finance those mortgages.
Oh.
So we have new mortgages on the books.
Right.
And that money will be used to pay off, because you made sales, to pay off our construction loan.
Right.
So apparently the brother-in-law was in a desperate situation, goes to Bill's wife, his sister, and says, you guys got to do this. You got to be one of the straw borrowers.
Oh, boy.
Bill, of course, at that point, is now no longer sitting on the criminal court. He's sitting on, I think it was called the Chancery Court, probate and real estate and other things. So he didn't want to do it. But the wife kept begging him, look, we'll make the mortgage payments, just didn't put down the down payment.
Right.
We're not really buying it.
That's his wife's brother.
And it's my brother. He's going to
Right.
go into bankruptcy. And
Right, we got to help
everything.
him. Family helps family.
In a lapse of judgment, Bill agreed to do it, figuring, hey, there's going to be nobody harmed at the end of the day because these units will eventually be flipped and sold to somebody else. In the meantime, the bank's being paid,
Yep.
okay? And the loans are the construction loans being paid off. Everybody's happy. Well, it turns out there was a fire. The fire destroyed the place. But unbeknownst to Bill and all the other people who agreed to do this, including a local doctor here I think he was either here in South Florida, he may have been in Chicago also.
So was a local suspicious fire or no?
No,
okay.
I don't think so.
Right, okay.
Like, there's no allegation of
It
that.
was in Chicago, it would have been more
Turns-
suspicious.
right. Turns out that the insurance policy covering the condo had lapsed
Oh, my.
because I guess
What
the
a-
financial problems. he
It's the
didn't-
perfect storm for this guy.
So now there's
Oh.
no insurance to pay. Now the bank is really screwed. And so what happens is they turn around and they sue.
All the straw
They
buyers.
do
and,
some investigation. They find out what really happened. So they look at the numbers. They look at the books. They find out, I forget all the details. And next thing you know, they turn that over to the FBI because it's clear-cut mortgage fraud,
right.
bank fraud. And next thing you know, Bill becomes under investigation for bank fraud here in the Southern District of Florida.
Wow.
Now,
Wow, he's got-
it's assigned to a U.S. attorney here in the Southern District of Florida, an assistant, who later became a state court judge. I won't mention her name. And I was working with my partner at the time, Patty Kyle, former federal magistrate, excellent lawyer, and another lawyer from Chicago. We were like the local lawyers down here because the investigation was down here by the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Right.
And so the three of us are on this case, and we managed, along with the other lawyers representing the other people, to convince the U.S. attorney here to get cross-designated and sworn in as a special assistant state attorney in St. Lucie County. And instead of these guys being federally prosecuted, get charged with a misdemeanor
Oh, wow.
in St. Lucie County.
That's a brilliant move. Yeah.
It was wonderful. Of course, the deal for our client is he had to give up his quest
Sure.
to be a federal judge.
Right. Or any judge, I would imagine.
Well,
And-
that's where it gets interesting.
okay.
So we go in front of this judge in St. Lucie County, and that morning we have a deal worked out with the prosecutor, who's now the state attorney on the case. Judge, like you know, in state court, when you go in on a case, judge knows nothing about the case,
Correct.
knows there's a deal,
Mm-hmm.
so, they're going to go with it 99 times out of 100.
Exactly, because they trust the attorneys in front of them. They've communicated. They're prepared. They know the ins and outs of the case, and they've reached an agreement. And the judge is going to trust that they're being professional and in good faith, presenting something to them that makes sense.
Right.
And that 1% of the time, the judge might tweak it a little bit. But you're right. They give discretion to those. They defer to the professionalism of the two lawyers, the prosecutor and defense, presenting them with this deal. And
So we get this deal with the prosecutor. We go into court that morning with a bunch of other attorneys representing their clients who will get the same deal. And the judge is reading this, and he's seeing that our client is a sitting judge in Chicago, in Cook County. So he looks up, and I remember the thing he said. He said, "I'm in awe of this group." Never heard a judge say that
Right.
about defendants.
Ever.
Okay, I'm in awe. This one was a doctor, a surgeon, a judge.
Right. It makes
And they're being
sense.
charged with this silly little misdemeanor that we concocted to get rid of the case.
Which was brilliant. I said that earlier. That was a brilliant,
Okay.
brilliant move.
Well, of course, there was financial involvement in it to pay off the bank, and there were civil suits
Right.
that they're going to have
Yeah,
to
the
resolve,
victims.
but at least on the criminal side. And so we work out the deal. I think he paid a very minor fine. He was not sentenced to jail. He literally, the thing was over right there and then. was no
No
sentence.
probation.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
it was done.
yeah.
So now he goes back to Chicago. Our end of it is done. We're very happy for him. It was a real lapse in judgment. There was no anticipation or intent on his part to hurt anybody. Clearly, he should have known better.
Was his wife prosecutor or just
No,
him?
no.
Okay.
So what happens is he goes back to Chicago, and now there's an investigation by, I don't know what they call it in Chicago,
Right.
judicial, committee that supervises and disciplines judges.
Right.
But remember, at this point in time, he hires a fabulous, nationally known attorney who at one point had been head of the American Bar Association
Wow, that's a good.
to deal with the judicial investigation.
And by the way, as it should be, the rules are very, very strict with what judges can do and can't do, outside of their courtroom. I mean, I have an aunt. She just retired as a chief judge. Her entire career, if we went to dinner, she would pay. She would pay for herself. Her nephew, she would never let me pay. Like these judges.
Oh, that's a great person to go with.
Right, yeah, take her to the nicest dinners. I don't have to pay for it. But the rules of ethics that they have to live by and live up to are very, very strict. Like I said, as they should be. So there's no conflicts of interest and so forth. But so up in Chicago,
he hires this lawyer, this nationally known lawyer who's former president of the American Bar Association, to deal with the disciplinary proceeding in Cook County. But at that particular point in time, they had just finished, I think it was called Operation Greylord. It was like the courtroom case I mentioned before,
in Miami,
where a whole bunch of judges in Chicago were determined to be corrupt.
Yes, yeah.
So actually, compared to him, the joke we used to say was, our client was the cleanest judge in Chicago. And what happened is, miraculously, this lawyer was so good. I don't remember the details because I wasn't involved. But Bill was able to keep his seat
That's impressive.
as a sitting judge in Cook County. And years later, I went to visit Chicago on some other case, and I called him, went up to visit him at the top of the daily courtroom building, and he took me out for the best dim sum I ever had in my life.
Did he make you pay?
No, he paid.
Okay, good.
Maybe he learned his lesson.
Yeah, he did. He learned his lesson.
But the bottom line is that's another example of how somebody, a really good guy, just messes up his life. Because I'm sure he wanted to be a federal judge, and he would have been a great judge, but for that lapse of judgment.
Right. A lot of our cases are like that. We say, people ask, how can you defend guilty people or people accused of a crime? And we've talked about this on an earlier episode, and there's a lot of answers to that question. But just because you're arrested and charged with a crime doesn't mean you're guilty. Or if you are guilty, it doesn't mean that you really have a criminal mind, a conspiracy type, philosophy. You could have just done something innocently with reasons that were, well-intended. And it turns out that at the end of the day, it happened to be a crime. I got a call today on a new client that is in major, major civil litigation. And it's funny, it's similar to your, it happened in the same area that you just talked about in the Port St. Lucie area. And this builder filed, there was a whole bankruptcy involved and this and that, and there's major civil litigation going on. And one of the things in the civil litigation that the opposing party is saying is that the guy who hired me today filed a fake lien on the property, that he didn't have a legal right, that he didn't have a right to file this lien on the property. And they've actually taken that to the police department. And my client got a call from the police detective saying, hey, we've got this claim. We heard one side of it. We'd like to hear your client's side of it now too. Basically, we're going to talk further about this, but I think but this guy was just doing his job, and now an opposing party, as part of civil litigation that is very contentious, is trying to paint it as a crime, that it was an illegal.
Well, that's a very common thing that people should be aware of. A lot of times in civil litigation, when it involves money, there's such animosity between the parties. And the lawyers representing a party who may feel aggrieved, may think they're the victim, in order to get leverage, will often try to get a criminal investigation going.
That's right, yeah.
Because what happens is this: if you get a criminal investigation going, and then, especially if it's a federal matter, and then agents come out to visit and try to talk to your client, and your client, rightfully so, doesn't want to talk to him without an attorney present, and you ultimately decide you're not going to let your client talk, and there's a grand jury investigation, they give your client the opportunity to testify in the grand jury, and you decline because you don't want him to make statements that later on could be used against him. What happens in that scenario is they then try to use that against you in the civil case.
That's right. Yep. They do.
And the end result is there are so many cases I've been involved in, and there will be some stories we tell later on, absolutely outrageous conduct by the civil lawyers and the prosecutor. We have a case going on right now.
Yeah.
The prosecutor left the government because of the stuff that he did.
Yeah.
And the case right now, who knows where it's at.
Let's do a quick commercial
break.
break.
Mark and Guy, we got to get paid. We got to get these commercials in here.
Yeah.
I forgot to interrupt.
We've been on such a roll. Go ahead, Ben. Run the commercial, and then we'll wrap up with some other thoughts that we have. You're Free to Go is sponsored by Lang Realty, South Florida's premier residential real estate broker. Whether you're buying, selling, or renting a home or condo, Lang's experienced realtors are standing by ready to help you. Contact one of Lang's top realtors today at 561-703-2427. Mark, you were just talking about how in civil litigation, sometimes they'll use some, criminal allegations in a civil claim and try to get some pressure on one of the parties to be concerned about a criminal investigation. And so one of the things that you and I do is, or we've recognized that a lot of civil litigators, they don't know the elements of a crime. So they'll see a lawsuit and they won't pick up on the fact that these causes of action could also be, even though they're civil, could also be criminal. So you and I have lectured to civil litigators and say, hey, here's what you need to be on the lookout for, the red flags, that if you're responding to litigation, that to let you know, hey, there could be a criminal investigation going on behind the scenes. So watch out for these red flags. If you see them, call us. So
yeah, I've had a actual seminar that I did for quite some time here in South Florida, and it was called Criminal Law Issues for Civil Litigators, and then the subtitle, which I thought really was the key title, was How to Keep You and Your Client Out of the Hooskow.
Perfect, right. Well, a lot of times the feds are behind the scenes watching the civil litigation because
But we have a case right now, which we won't mention because it's still going on, where the very thing is going on. And a lot of times, you're right, they'll actually let the civil litigation do the investigatory work that they would have to do, and they'll see where it turns out, and they'll see if it turns up in discovery, in depositions, or even in a trial, if it goes that far, information that they can now use in their criminal case. In bringing a criminal case.
Right.
So you got to be very careful.
Yeah, so the smart civil litigator will pick up on that and then call us in to, sit with them throughout the case and prepare just in case it does go criminal, which is important.
Well, this has been a fascinating, I love the story. That the key to that story, as it turns out, your story, was how you were able to pull the wool over your client's eyes and scare the bejesus out of them. Get a reaction.
Right. The best part is he was in a board meeting, reading it as it came over his tablet, I guess, and started fuming and literally.
Now, we should advise our listeners that the truth is, I'm sure, if he was just a regular client and not one of your dear friends, you would never do that.
Never, ever.
But you were playing a joke on a really dear friend.
A very dear friend. All three of them I knew well. And like I said earlier, to this day, they still laugh about it and think it was...
Well, you should have read the end of the letter first.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad he didn't. I probably would have, because in that serious case, gone to the conclusion.
That's great.
Right.
All right, well, I think we're going to wrap up right now. We've done our sponsors. Who was the group you were talking about at the very beginning? Because we should get them as a sponsor.
No, I was talking about our sponsors, Milburn Men's Clothing.
No, but there was another company that you mentioned?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Well, we'll have
maybe
to look at this.
maybe podcast junkies. They need to step up. Ben and his team here. They need to step up and be one of our
Right.
sponsors.
Right.
We'll give them a good deal.
We'll give them a great
Right?
deal.
You know what? I'll even throw in a "You're free to go" T-shirt or something.
Absolutely some merch.
Yeah.
Okay, as they say, it's all in the merchandising.
That's what Ben keeps telling us, at least. He keeps
That's
telling
right.
us. So, all right. Well, until then, we tell all of our viewers, you are free to go. Down Low Investigations is a sponsor of You're Free to Go. Behind every great criminal defense attorney is a great private investigator. That's why Mark and I use Down Low to investigate cases all over the country. Down Low can help you too, whether you're running a background check on an employee or running a background check on a blind date, or let's say you need someone followed or some other type of investigative work conducted. Down Low is the way to go. Call Download Investigations at 561-843-1806. Everything expressed and discussed in this episode are the opinions and experiences of attorneys Guy Fronston and Mark Nurek and their guests. All ethical rules are complied with. Attorney-client privilege and confidential information is not shared or released during these episodes, and names, dates, locations, and other identifying information may be changed to protect confidentiality. Topics are embellished, and none of the statements made constitute legal advice and should not be considered or relied on as such.